Good evening. My name is Kojo Insafuapoku, KNP, the voice of the youth. I have said to myself that from time to time I'll be doing this video to be able to interact, discuss a topic, and also use this medium to educate the masses on certain things that for me I think as a nation we need education on. Today, I want to pick a topic which I think has been bothering me, and I think a lot of people also do not seem to understand how we got a state formation. We take a lot of things for granted. We are born into a country, and we basically grew up in a country, and for now, we don't even teach history in schools in Ghana. So most people do not even know the basic history of how um, the state became a state or Ghana became Ghana or how we started living in a country. We have always never been like this. We've always never lived in a country as humans. There were times when everybody just get up and roam with their family and kids and live in the wilderness. But there was a process that started that got us to where we are, where there are various countries around the world and there are various households around the world. And for us to understand that, we would also be able to understand how some people will say that, oh, government is not a business or government is not run like a business. So if you are running a business and you're making money, you should not run government to make money or government don't make business decisions. It's unfortunate. We've had ministers and we had some people in high places make that statement that government don't always make business decisions or government is not there for business. I beg to differ, and I want to take this opportunity to start from the beginning. Look, there were a time back when humans just lived individually. There was about individualistic nature of how we lived. So one person lives, finds a counterpart, a female, and they give birth and they have a family. And then they live in a wilderness just by themselves. Then the land around them is what they farm. And then they basically, that's their nucleus family. Then as time goes on, you realize that they will farm that land or live on that land and hunt on that land until somebody who is stronger than them come and displace them from that land and they move on until they find a safer place to stay and start hunting from there. Then it get to a point that individuals were like, if we live individually with our wife and kids, a stronger person comes to displace us. So why don't we get together as groups? So instead of 4, 5 people living individually in the big wilderness, let's come together as one people and have each other's back, protect each other. So that's how people started living in groups. So we were no longer having individuals living on land, hunting on their own. We now have 4, 5, 6 families coming together, and the men will go hunting together. Then, when they live together and they go hunting together, another group of people who are much stronger will come and displace them because they will come and fight with them and kick them off where they stay. So then people realize that look, if we are just 5, 6 and a larger group can come and displace us, let's also look for people who can come and join us and we become much bigger. Then, when they started forming these groups of society, and the men will go hunting together and come back, they started also farming to feed the family. So they will farm and they will hunt. Then there's a need to do a bit of protection. If somebody comes, the person can just walk into our compound, let's build fence. So the men in that community will build a fence around the small community that they have. And that is what they will now have as a community of, let's say, 10 households. Then nobody knows what's going to happen the next day or plan. So the people decided that they need a leader. They need somebody who will be in charge of the whole community that they have. So they said, okay, each household will have one person lead for maybe 6 months or 1 year, and then it goes to another household, and then the person will also lead. That is how we started having this formation of communities And with that formation of community, we started having leaders. Now, the upkeep of that community was that it was for each individual household to contribute for the upkeep of that community. So they will all farm, pool their food together, and if they go and sell the farm produce, whatever comes out of it, that community will keep it and use it for whatever they needed to use it for. That is the fundamental of states, how our state started. So it started off with individuals coming together to pool resources together. But when there's the need to do something, the men will get together and elect one person to be able to now do what was needful. So then they started having one person becoming a leader, but then they will rotate it from household to household. Then we now moved on to a much more complex state where there were a lot more people coming into these communities. Then the visitors, they will be the original heads in that community. So each male of each community, of each household, will be a leader of that household. Visitors, after a while, might also be able to be given land and be able to have representation in this leadership. That is how humans started living with each other and started cooperating in farming, and also started cooperating in making sure that they protect each other. At that stage of our human being, if there is a need to do something, everybody pulls in and do it together. So it was like, okay, we need to build this. Everybody will now chip in their equal strength to do it. Then we now moved on to the point where people are now becoming much bigger community, not just 6 or 7 households. Then they now started having to have people who came in and were just looking for work. So we have something called serfdom, which were the commoners, people who just came into a community. They don't belong in that community, but they just wanted in that community, and they just want to basically live in that community. They didn't have a say because the original household elders were the leaders in that, and the rotation of leadership now goes from household to household. Then the introduction of monarchy and all that came as a result of these people coming together and allowing one person to lead them, or one person to become king, or one person to become a leader. That is how this whole issue of living together came about. Now, you ask yourself, when you now have a community living together and you have a community of people, how do you now fund this community of people? Back in the day, there was no money, so they do barter trade. They farm, they take it to the next place to get sheep or to get that, and they now bring it back. And everybody will now be able to now say that, okay, I have contributed my quota for the upbringing of this community. Let's move it fast forward a bit to now today. We have a state, and the initial question I now posed was, is a state the same as a business? It's the same thing. What's the difference between a state and a business? What you would have is that state came together as individuals, individuals came together and formed a state. So there is a certain responsibility of the people who gave their freedom to one person to protect them. In return, the person who's supposed to protect them will now be given certain resources to protect them. That's how the state was formed. So as I explained earlier, individual households will give resources to whoever has been elected as a leader of that community to protect them. Then in return, the leader will now use that resources to protect the people. Every time there is something that's to be done, everybody in that community or in that state is supposed to chip in equally to make sure that is done. A business is normally started by one person who has an idea and wants to do something or make money. So he will put certain things together, put resources together, have workers, but his prime aim is profit. The difference between a state and business is that when a business prime aim is profit, state's prime aim was not profit. Prime aim was survival and making sure that everybody is well kept together and everybody is provided for. So that is the difference between a state and a business. But when you move past that, you ask yourself, A state is supposed to make money and look after its people. The same way a business is supposed to make money and the business owner has to look after his family. So a business is supposed to make profit. A state is not necessarily supposed to make profit, but a state is supposed to also make money to be able to what? Generate these monies and look after its people. There are two ways a state can look after itself. Either when there's a budget, let's say 100 cities, everybody in that state contribute towards the 100 cities equally. That is what today you probably want to call taxes. So if the state wants to spend 100 cities, everybody in that community will have to contribute towards that 100 cities. Then in a business, one person basically comes up with the money, or a couple of people come up with the money. Then basically they invest the money to make a profit. In a state, that doesn't happen. In a state, everybody is equally liable for the cost of whatever has to do. So let's move that to today Ghana, and let's ask ourselves, is Ghana supposed to be making profits? Yes, we are supposed to make profit. That is the only way that we make money to be able to take care of the people that we have. If we don't make a profit, then what it means is that if there is an expenditure, let's say we need 1 million Ghana cedis to take care of our roads, hospital, education, everything, then every single person that lives in Ghana is supposed to contribute towards that 1 million cedis. So the state will have 1 million cedis to be able to do what it has to do. That is difficult to do because you cannot take money from every single person that lives in the country to be able to do the budget of what the state has to do. That is why we have evolved into certain things like the state owning companies to do business, so that that business will make profit, and that profit can be used to look after the vulnerable and those that don't have. Because as you realize, in a society, not everybody will have the same amount of money. So when you now want to raise 1 million cedis, you cannot divide that 1 million cedis equally among everybody, so everybody pays the same. So the state making money is going to use that money to take care of the vulnerable. Those that have money will pay their contribution in taxes. That is how the state is supposed to take care of itself. We have a scenario in Ghana today where, one, we are not making profit. Because we've also introduced bureaucracy to manage the affairs of the nation, though we cannot collect the money needed by the state from everybody, the bureaucrats who are supposed to take care of our resources and manage the resources that we have are also scheming off the top. So we have corruption and we have misappropriation of funds. So not only are we not getting enough money from the companies that we have registered to make us money to take care of the vulnerable, the administration that we've put in place, the bureaucracy that we've put in place to make sure that people are able to now look after some of these resources, they are also scheming, and that is where we have corruption and the misappropriation of state resources. So we are not making enough money. Then the bureaucracy we've introduced, the state-owned enterprises, the ministries, the civil servants, the technocrats, they are all also not doing what they're supposed to do. So the little resources that we have, they are misappropriating it, and there is also corruption in our processes. That makes it difficult for the state to do the things it has to do. So then how does the state find money to do all the things that its people need? That's where we come into borrowing. So the state now has to borrow. Initially, you can only borrow from, before in the 80s and 90s, there were multinationals, bilateral. You can only borrow from countries. Ghana couldn't really go into the open debt market and borrow, where today we have the bond market. In the 80s and 90s, we didn't have that ability to do that. So it's only borrowing from the World Bank, the IMF, or borrowing from other countries. So other countries will give us loans that we will pay back over a certain period of time, because we don't have enough to resource and do the things for our people. Along the line, we've taken more money than the people that are put in charge, trying to have to look within and raise resources to be able to take care of its people, have neglected that. So as I said earlier, in the early state and the early communities, When there is a need to raise 100 cedis, people in that community help to raise 100 cedis. We've now gotten to the point where our leaders has abandoned looking internally to raise the money to do what we can do. We are now trying to do things that we can't afford, but we think that we need to do. So as a result, we are now borrowing more and more and more. What happens when you borrow? When you borrow, you need to pay the principal and the interest. So when you borrow and that money does not go to expand your economy, a time will come when you have to pay back the money and you are not able to pay it back because you didn't use the money to expand the economy. Your bureaucrats, the leaders, and the people in power has abused the money that has been borrowed. So the time to pay the money, you have not used the money in good faith and in good stead, so you can't repay that money. So we got to a point in 2001 that we borrowed so much we can't pay, so we're giving debt forgiveness, which everybody remember during His Excellency John Agyekum Kufuor's time. It was HIPIC. So we went to HIPIC where we borrowed so much as a nation we can't afford to pay it back. So the countries forgave us our debt. Then in 2007 we found oil. When we found oil, it was like, we are going to make so much billions of dollars, so we can actually go into the debt market, and with the resources from the oil we can pay back. Then we went back to the borrowing. Again, we left that basic principle of, if we need money for the society, the people in the society should look at what they can afford to contribute towards that and live within your means. We abandoned that. When we wanted to raise 1 million, we didn't go to the citizens and say, look, we need 1 million. Citizens, help us raise 1 million. We didn't go to farming. We didn't go to the resources available to us to raise that 1 million. We said that, look, we found oil. I think Ghana should look like Dubai. Ghana should look like the UK. Ghana should look like the US. So we should now go borrow money and do all these things at once. That's what we started doing in 2010. So we now borrowed in the bond market. And the good thing about the bond market is that you don't have to be paying the money, the principal, and the interest. If it's 10-year bond, you take, let's say, $700 million is for 10 years. So in 10 years, you now have to pay back the 700 million. But on yearly basis, you only pay back the interest that is due on the money that you borrowed. So there was a bit of a leeway where you can use that money for 10 years. We use these monies, but again, there was corruption, there was abuse of funds, there was misappropriation. So that money that we started taking from the bond market did not go to expand our economy. What did it do? It basically made sure that the money was coming into the country. We were doing things that we thought we need, which is these roads, mega projects, bridges, overheads, and all those things. But guess what? We were not looking to collect enough money or put in resources so that it will get to a point where, as a nation, we generate enough money to take care of our needs. So when the time to pay that first 700 million was up, we didn't have money to pay back 700 million. So we went into the bonds market, borrowed 1.7 million, used 7 million to pay back the old bond, and took another 1 billion to come in and say, okay, we'll pay that in 10 years. And that is what we've been doing. Now you ask yourself, why am I worried if we continue to borrow? The problem where we find ourselves today as a nation is because when the bond market was closed, the rating that we needed to go to the bonds market was lowered, and Ghana could no longer go to the bonds market. All of a sudden, we had a problem, because the only way that as a nation we've been financing what we do through borrowing is no longer available to us. Now, the bad thing with borrowing is that you borrow from the foreign world. You borrow in dollars. So every year you have to collect cedis from your people, change it into dollar, and go and pay the interest or the principal on what you have borrowed. Down the line, we've gotten to the point where today the government themselves need too much dollar to pay the loans and the interest, so that whatever money they collect in Ghana is not enough, because they have to change that cedis into dollars. to go and pay the interest on loans. Let's ask ourselves, the reason our cedi doesn't have strength is that we have overborrowed in a foreign currency over the period. So today, we're still borrowing to do roads. We're still borrowing to build hospitals. We're still borrowing for a lot of things. But the fundamental is that everybody's money keep dwindling. Everybody gets poorer because the cedi keeps weakening, because the government need to take a lot of that cedi, change it into dollar to go and pay the money that we borrowed. So from the beginning, I showed you guys how basic a society was, how basic a community was. You need something, you look to the people within that community to pay for it. Over the years, we've abandoned that. We saw that borrowing to fix, borrowing to buy, borrowing to build was easier. So we went down that route. Today, we had a situation in 2016 where John Mahama did a green book, showed us all the beautiful things that he has built. Ghanaians said, no, we are still not feeling that rich. We are not, after getting oil in 2011, we are not doing as well that we should. The economy is bad. We went to IMF in 2015. So please go out. So Ghanaians voted out John Mahama. Then come 2017, the new government led by Nana Akufo-Addo. We thought there was new ideas that were coming in. But again, the finance minister's magic wand was borrow, 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 which they did. Now, if you now continue to borrow, again, Ghanaians won't feel the wealth because you are borrowing, and in the long run, you take our cedis to change it into dollar to pay back that money. So now, fast forward 65 years down the line, Ghanaians are complaining because the cedi keeps going down, is getting weak. You are borrowing to show us the things you claim you've done. Yes, we've seen the roads, we've seen the hospitals, we've seen all the good things that you've used our money to do. But Ghanaians don't feel wealthy. Ghanaians are poorer. Everything is going up because the cedi, again, is weaker. Because we have not saved money. We have not made a profit. We've even abandoned the principle of trying to make profit as a nation. We no longer save money as a nation. We are just only trying to collect money to pay interest on loans. The principals we can't pay because when it's time to pay the principal, we borrow to pay it back and we owe again. The reason everybody is not happy, and look, if we don't change this mindset, thinking that government doesn't make business decisions, we will continue to borrow and borrow and borrow and go back to the IMF every 3 years because we have abandoned the basic principle of let's live within our means. If we need 100 cedis, let's look to the people within the state and collect the 100 cedis from them. If we need 1,000 cedis, let's see how we can do agriculture, sell those produce, and generate that 1,000 cedis to do what we need. If we live within our means and get a culture of savings, if our government starts saving, stop the borrowing, start saving, cut the corruption and misappropriation of the people put in charge of our technocracy, our bureaucracy. Okay, so the civil servants, the technocrats, we see billions and billions and billions of dollars every year by the Auditor General telling us that this money is being misappropriated. So we are not making money. The small money that we have is being misappropriated, and we are not going after that. The easier way is to borrow and borrow and borrow. That brings me to my final point. If we keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, it's not going to happen. We need to change the way we do things. We need to go back to the fundamental community living, where if it's 6 people in a community and when they needed to do something, it was the 6 people that contributed towards it. Today, we are 32 million in the country, 32 million citizens. If we need something, can we look at a scenario where we are only doing things that the 32 million can afford? so that the little money that we get, we don't have to now mop it up to take it to the foreign land to pay back the loans and pay back interest. We need to do something different. John Mahama did the Green Book. And from what we hear today in the social media and in the news, the Donado-led government is doing the same thing, building infrastructure, telling us the beautiful roads they are doing. Yes, but all these things are being done with loans. It's not our own money. We tried to introduce e-levy. Ghanaians didn't believe that we are being prudent with their money, so they didn't want to give us any more money. Ghanaians are not against taxes. Citizens are not against taxes. They are only against how you misappropriate their money. So if today we lead by example, collect what we need from the people, use it judiciously, build prisons so that people who are bad in society will now be put in prison. The good will now be looked after. Those misappropriating our finances, be it a technocrat, a politician, or a civil servant, is put in jail. If the leader does not have to travel, then Zoom. For a whole year, nobody traveled. Why are we so quick to travel out of the country? There is a trade fair somewhere. Everybody now gets up. 10, 7 ministries go to a trade fair. Why? As a nation, we are quick to go to other nations to try and bring investment. The nation that you are going to, they know more about your country than you yourself. So forget trying to sell your country to them. Stay in your country, do well in your country. They will come because they will hear the good news of what's happening in your country. The only way for us to save Mother Ghana is to change the way we've abandoned the basic principles of community. Let's live within our means. If money that we need to do something, let's see what the people can contribute towards and basically bring back the spirit of local government. That smaller modular community, the municipal, the district, collect, review the property rates. Collect property rate, use that to develop that community so they know that the money they've paid to the municipality or the district is working for them. If there's a good municipality like East Legon and they are paying their property rates, the roads shouldn't be bad, their gutters should be fixed, the potholes should be fixed, so the people within East Legon will know that their property rate is working for them. The centralization of things is not helping, because if government collects the money, it goes to a bottomless pit. It tried to do things in other parts of the country, whilst the people who have paid their share is not seeing the results of what they paid. That is why local government is a good thing. Because if one municipality collects money, they use that money in that municipality. If a municipality doesn't collect money, the people in that municipality don't see any development. So that is the only way that we can develop the country and let people see results, because an assemblyman who lives in an area where they pay their property rates should be able to fix their potholes, fix all the problems within that community because they are paying their property rates. That's what happens in London. If you live in Hackney, you live in Chelsea, you live in Knightsbridge, you see the difference because you only have to go and see the work that the council does. People in Knightsbridge, people in Chelsea, people in Hackney live in a community where their council tax is what develops. Yes, central government do bring money, but most of the money used to make sure that people in that community are doing well is because the local government system is working. The only way to develop Ghana, the only way that we can show people that we know and we hear and we can do what they want is to make sure that we do the local government system very well. Thank you. I hope this has been very educative. And in the coming days, in the coming months, I'll be doing more of these videos. Thank you.